Welcome back to Jarhead Jed, where adventure is always just around the corner. In part 2, I made it up to the top of Viking Mountain, and honestly, there wasn't much to see. Just fog, cold, and wind. But I stayed up there for a minute, not for the view, just to sit in it. Because after a ride like that, you don't just turn around and leave. But eventually you have to. And that's where this part starts. Heading back down. Same road, same conditions, but it doesn't feel quite the same. At some point, you've got to turn around. Not because you're done, just because that's how it works. You go up, and eventually, you come back down. However, I hadn't made up my mind yet what the rest of the day was going to look like. Whether I was going to keep riding, or just head back down and call it. There wasn't really a plan at that point, just the road in front of me. I didn't rush it. Sat there for a minute before I headed back, not trying to figure anything out, not thinking through anything deep, just sitting in it. Because I knew once I pointed that bike back down that road, it wasn't going to feel the same. Same mountain, same rain, same fog still hanging in the air. Nothing about the conditions had changed. But the direction had. I turned the bike around and started easing back down, slow at first, not because I had to, just taking it in. And almost immediately it hit me. This didn't feel like the same road. Which doesn't really make sense because I had just come up it. Same gravel, same turns, same everything. But it didn't line up the way I'd expected. The way the road falls away from you instead of rising up to you changes everything. Corners you rolled into one way now come at you completely different. Lines that felt natural climbing don't work the same going down. You've got to adjust. And for a minute, there's a hesitation. Not fear, just that moment where your brain is catching up to what's different. Because it's still trying to treat it like the same ride, and it's not. You start noticing things you didn't before. Not big things, small ones. Where the road leans just enough to push you wide if you're not paying attention. Where the gravel is a little looser than it looked on the way up. Where the water has been running across longer than you realized. Stuff that didn't stand out before, because your focus was somewhere else. On the way up, you're thinking about the climb, and getting there, about what's ahead. Even if you're not saying it out loud, there's still a forward pull. But on the way down, that's gone. There's no top to get to anymore, no destination pulling you forward. So your attention shifts, and when it does, you see more. The road starts to feel different, not easier, not harder, just clearer, like you understand it better. And it's not because anything changed out there. It's not because you've already been through it. You know what it asks of you now. You're not guessing. And that changes how you're moving through it. I found myself riding smoother on the way down, not pushing, not forcing anything, just letting it come to me. And that's when I started thinking about how much of that applies outside of a ride like this. Because how often do we go through something once and then come back through it later and expect it to feel the same? Same place, same situation, same people. But it didn't land the same. And most of the time, we don't stop to think about why. We just notice it's different. But I think a lot of it comes down to this. You're not the same person you were the first time through. Even if nothing else changed, you did. And that changes everything. The descent requires a different kind of focus. There's less room for mistakes. You've got gravity working with you now, but that doesn't mean it's easier. You've got to be more controlled, more intentional, more aware of what's right in front of you. Because it's easy to get comfortable. You've already done it once. You think you know it. But that's where you get caught. Confidence without attention will get you in trouble quick. So I stayed in it. Not overthinking, not rushing, just paying attention. And the more I did that, the more everything started to settle in. Not the road, me. Because I wasn't fighting it anymore. I wasn't trying to make it something it wasn't. I had already made the decision back at the start of the ride. I knew why I was out there. That didn't change. But the way I was experiencing it did. And that's where I started to connect a little deeper. Because sometimes it's not about finding a new reason. It's about seeing the same reason more clearly. The further I went down, the more obvious that became. Same road, but it almost felt like I was riding it for the first time. And that added something to it, because I wasn't riding with a clear end in mind anymore. I wasn't working towards anything specific. I was just deciding as I went. And that changes how you experience it. When you're not locked into an outcome, you pay more attention to what's right in front of you. I think that's something a lot of us struggle with. We want the whole plan laid out. We want to know where we're going before we commit to the next step. But sometimes, you don't get that. Sometimes all you get is the next stretch of road and a choice to keep moving. And I think that's what happens when your focus shifts. Not in some big, dramatic way. Just enough. Enough to see what you missed before. Enough to move through it differently. There's a verse that came to mind somewhere in there. A man's heart plans his way, but the Lord directs his steps. Proverbs 16:9. And I think a lot of the time, we focus on the plan. Where we're going. How it's supposed to look. But it's the steps that actually matter. The ones right in front of you. And sometimes those steps don't look the way you thought they would. Same road, different direction. And you either adjust or you fight it. By the time I got further down the mountain, it didn't feel unfamiliar anymore. It felt understood. Not because I had it figured out, but because I had been through it. And that's a different kind of confidence. Not loud, not forced, just steady. And I had a feeling that this wasn't the last time that lesson was going to show up. And once that settled in, I started noticing something else. How quiet it really was out there. Not just the kind of quiet where there's no noise, but the kind where nothing's pulling at you. no traffic, no people, no distractions trying to get your attention. Just the sound of the bike, the tires on the gravel, and everything else still. And I don't think we realize how rare that is anymore. But to be somewhere where nothing's competing for your focus. No phone, no constant noise, no pressure to respond to anything, just space. And for a while there, that was enough. I wasn't thinking about what was next. I wasn't thinking about where I needed to be. I wasn't even thinking about whether I was going to keep riding or go home. That question was still there. I just wasn't worried about answering it. And that felt different. Not because everything was figured out, but because it didn't need to be right then. I think we spend a lot of time trying to fill every gap, every quiet moment, every bit of space. We reach for something, noise, distraction, anything to keep us from sitting in it. But out there's nowhere to hide from it. And after a while, you stop trying to. You just let it be quiet. And there's something about that settles you down in a way that's hard to explain. Not because anything changed, but because you finally stopped trying to change it. And I didn't realize how much I needed that until I was already in it. The road kept dropping underneath me, still the same road, still the same conditions, but I didn't feel like something I was working through anymore. It just felt like something I was part of. And somewhere in that, I started to realize something. Maybe the climb showed me one side of it, but this was showing me something different. Because it's one thing to push through something. It's another thing to slow down enough to actually sit in it. And I had a feeling that was going to matter more the longer I stayed out there. Because at that point, I still hadn't decided what the rest of the day looked like. Keep riding or head back. And for the first time, I was alright with not knowing yet. And I think that's where this part of the ride shifts again. Not in the road, but in what I was starting to notice. Because once you get past the climb, and once the direction changes, what you're left with is the space around you. And I had a feeling there was more out there than I'd been paying attention to. If you've been riding along with me, I appreciate it. Go ahead and hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you in part 4. Because sometimes the quiet is where you find what you didn't even know you were looking for.